The year was 1919. India was still under British rule and the air was thick with unrest. People had gathered peacefully at Jallianwala Bagh, unaware that the day would soon be written in history with blood. What followed changed the course of India's freedom struggle forever. World War I had just ended. Woodrow Wilson spoke of self-determination, and new nations were being born from the ashes of the old. And yet, in the heart of Asia, the British Indian Empire, which had sent 1.3 million Indian soldiers to fight its war, was drowning in its own paranoia. The Raj's reward for India's loyalty was not freedom, it was betrayal. April 13th, 1919, Baisakhi, a new year, a harvest festival. Thousands of families, Sikhs, Hindus and Muslims, had gathered in the city of Amritsar. They came to pray, to celebrate and to listen. They gathered in a walled garden called Jallianwala Bagh. And among the crowd, unbeknownst to anyone, were survivors who would change the course of history. One of them was a 10-year-old boy serving water named Udham Singh. But little did the people of India know that this garden, the peaceful symbol of their community, would by sundown rise to become the most brutal massacre in British history and the day that sealed the fate of the empire. Brigadier General Rowlatt Dyer is one of the most infamous men in history. The question is, how did a peaceful festival gathering turn into a killing field? What were the strategies of colonial suppression that led one man to unleash hell upon unarmed civilians? Watch this episode very carefully because this story has some very important lessons on power, fear, and the birth of revolution. To understand the massacre, you must first understand the collapse of British legitimacy. You see, the Raj had just launched a policy called Anarchical and Revolutionary Crimes Act of 1990. It is better known as the Rowlatt Act. This act promised to transform the colony, but instead of progress, it became one of the most repressive laws in history. To implement this policy, the British banned public gatherings. They gave themselves the power to arrest any Indian without a warrant and imprison them for 2 years, with no trial and no right to appeal. Overnight, Indians who had been promised more autonomy for their service in the war became criminals in their own land. And this is where it got even worse. The Raj declared war on dissent itself. So when Mahatma Gandhi called for a peaceful hartal, a strike, the British response was violence. Leaders were arrested, protesters were shot. This was the nightmare that Amritsar was exiled into. But what happened next was nothing less than a masterclass in calculated terror. You see, the local military commander, General Dyer, realized that in India, real British power did not come from law. It came from fear. So if he wanted to rise, if he wanted to control Punjab, he had to be inside the system, making an example. He applied to his superiors again and again for more power. And every single time the answer to the Indian people was the same. You are rejected. Your demands make you untrustworthy. So Dyer's first move after gaining control of the city reveals the mind of strategic tyrant. On the morning of April 13, 1919, he marched through the city, publicly banning all meetings. He knew Baisakhi would bring thousands of pilgrims into the city, unaware of his new decree. But this wasn't about law, it was about excess. You see, the Jallianwala Bagh was where the children of this city played. It was where families met. But this wasn't just a garden, it was an enclosure. It is hailed as a community space, but its high walls and at the time, its single narrow exit made it a death trap. अगर ये आप नंबर 2 देखें, 1 and 2, ये एंट्री है. तो यहाँ आके आर्मर्ड व्हीकल्स रुकी, बट आर्मर्ड व्हीकल्स के अंदर जाने के लिए रास्ता नहीं था. बिकॉज ये 2 नंबर जो एंट्री है, ये सबसे नैरो जगह है और ये ही एक इन आउट का रास्ता था. और 13 अप्रैल 1919 को जो भी आए वो सब इसी रास्ते से अंदर गए और अंदर बाग में बैठे. और जनरल डायर जो है अपने गोरखा रेजिमेंट और बलूचीज के साथ अपनी आर्मर्ड व्हीकल्स यहाँ रोकता है. जब उसने देखा कि रास्ता बहुत जो है नैरो है तो वो कुछ अपने साथ जवानों को लेकर विद राइफल्स इसी रास्ते से अंदर गया और यहाँ आकर अपने उसने सोल्जर्स को स्टेशन किया इन द डायरेक्शन ऑफ जहाँ सारे के सारे लोग बैठे थे. Dyer wasn't just enforcing a ban, he was gaining access to the largest, most concentrated group of defiant subjects he could find. What Dyer accomplished next should terrify every student of history. He took one of the peaceful gathering and turned it into so-called the economic miracle of terror for the British. This was the Jallianwala Bagh test. In 1919, Amritsar was rocked by protests. The Raj needed Punjab stable and scandal-free before Gandhi's Satyagraha movement could spread. And this is where Dyer was brought in to perform a surgical operation on India's most defiant city. And guess what? His method was executed with surgical precision. So, जब वो दो armored vehicles यहाँ आई और ये आप रास्ता देख रहे हैं कितना पतला है, तो ये ही एक सिंगल इन आउट का रास्ता था और इसी रास्ते से जब आर्मर्ड व्हीकल्स नहीं अंदर आ सकी तो जनरल डायर अपने गोरखा रेजिमेंट के कुछ जवानों को साथ लेकर इनसाइड इसी रास्ते से सीधा अंदर गया. He marched in with over 50 soldiers, Gurkhas and Baluchis. He didn't send them into the crowd to disperse it. He lined them up on the high bank at the entrance. He blocked the only exit. He declined special privileges like a warning. He cancelled lavish ceremonies like firing in the air, and he gave one order, just one order: fire. He ordered his men to fire not at the edges but into the thickest parts of the crowd. Soldiers वहाँ स्टेशन थे और यहाँ सारे जो है ओवरऑल लोग बैठे थे. 1650 राउंड फायर हुआ नॉन स्टॉप विदाउट वार्निंग और कई लोग अपनी जान बचाने के लिए इस कुएं में कूदे. The men, women and children fleeing for their lives. They fired for about 10 straight minutes. 1,650 rounds, and finally the British Raj was ready for its next phase of the rule. And because of this impressive track record of Dyer, he was promoted to the highest. No, he was brought before the Hunter Commission. It was an entry into the room where every major decision about India's future was being taken. The people deciding on Dyer's fate, they wanted an experienced, polished person who was neither too ambitious nor too strong. And Dyer, because of his history of military service, was seen as a less ambitious, controllable soldier. He had over 2 decades of experience and a clean image. So when the commission asked him to testify in 1919, Dyer emerged as the top candidate to be the scapegoat. And this is where the entire power table of the Raj was shocked. You know why? Because when General Dyer testified, everyone thought they could control him like a puppet. But as it turns, it was a catastrophic misjudgment. You know why? Because Dyer went on a verbal firing spree, and under the banner of doing his duty, he systematically eliminated any doubt about his intentions. He was asked, "Was it your intention to fire at the crowd?" He said, "Yes." He was asked, "Could you have dispersed the crowd without firing?" He said, "I think it quite possible. But they would have come back and laughed, and I would have made what I consider a fool of myself." Then in 1920, Dyer's supporters in Britain did something that shocked the world. The Morning Post newspaper, a major conservative paper, started a public fund for the man who saved India. Guess how many people supported it? Thousands. They raised 26,000 pounds, the equivalent of over £1 million today. Why? Because everyone knew what happened to the people who disagreed with Dyer. But here's the terrifying part. His dictatorship, his terror, actually worked. Punjab was crushed. The revolution was delayed. Dyer proved that dictatorship can deliver economic results? No. Dyer proved that a terror can deliver order faster than justice. But the $1 million question over here is, can a system built on fear and control keep ruling forever? Can you suppress 300 million people indefinitely while maintaining economic growth and moral authority? This is a very, very important question, because the answer to this question, who will determine the fate of empires and Jallianwala Bagh, the garden that learned that freedom comes from sacrifice and not promises, now controlled the answer. And the most dangerous part is that Gandhi, Nehru and Udham Singh didn't learn these lessons from books or business schools. They learned them by watching their own country destroy itself. And that's what made them so calculated, so patient and so terrifyingly effective. This is the story of Jallianwala Bagh. Its rise from a garden to a graveyard, and the strategies of terror that made it to the most dangerous and most important turning point in India's history. That's all from my side today. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to hit the like button. And for more such insightful historical and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.